Thank you very much, Doctor. A very interesting presentation which really emphasizes the importance of intellectual property rights protection and the business use of the intangible assets. Let's have now the first discussion. There'll be a talk, something that may be of special interest for you, as we're going to discuss with entrepreneurs. First of all, the companies and the sectors that, even despite the pandemic, have not only reinforced their business, but also found new paths of reaching you, their consumers. May we invite our guest, Łukasz? Let's invite to the main stage Ewa Kryszkiewicz, Manager Development and Cooperation with Architects, Tubondzin Group. For more than 35 years, Tubondzin has blazed the trails in industrial design, and they are world quality thanks to their advanced technologies. Innovation and design leader in their sector. The second person to join me, this is going to be, ladies and gentlemen, Jacek Adamczewski, Sales Director at Lena Lighting. This is a leading producer of modern lighting, and they focus on research and development, but also on design. Another person I'd like to invite is Mr. Przemysław Pączek, the CEO of Nevomo. Now, Nevomo may perhaps soon let us move on rails at the speed of the sound. That's an assumption, at least. Well, let's first start from 500 kilometers. Nevomo is a company that really used Hyperloop to work on innovative magnetic rail. Sorry. The following person is Piotr Bajtała, Vice President and co-founder of HealthUp. Piotr is an expert in mobile technologies, and he specializes in development of concepts. He works on digital design and mobile health. Is everyone seated? Therefore, let me sit next to you. It was planned a bit differently, but a microphone, yes? Okay. Okay, how about starting with Ewa, who is a representative of Tubondzin Group. We know that among all the pandemic, you have returned to the pace of development you had prior to COVID. How have you survived this difficult time, and what can a lesson be for our audience? I work with the architects and designers, so I've been in the business for many years. I'm also a psychologist by education, and this knowledge has proved highly useful. Last year, perhaps I revert the question, because we have business which is reinforced with design. I'd rather say that in our company, our design is our business. It has always been the business of Tubondzin. And last year, when actually the whole world waited with a bated breath, we had some investments which we have recently closed, and they were a part of a plan. They didn't come up as anything that would be additional connected to the pandemic, but of course, perforce, a handful of new projects were developed. I will perhaps discuss them later during this meeting, but this is an idea to tell you something about Tubondzin. It's one of the most innovative companies. I've listened about intellectual property with plenty of pleasure, because we have unique designs, and many of them are connected to the product, but also with the way we work with the market. You will have also a great pleasure to meet Dorota Koziara. We work with Dorota Koziara. She supports us with her sensitivity knowledge when it comes to the collection. We work with designers, with architects who make a huge contribution to our company. We have Maciej Zień, who is a fashion designer, Wojciech Siódmak, a Pole living in France. But the company are 4 companies, 1,200 people, and investments in 2016 at the level of 200 million zloty. The last one was really an expansion of the logistics center, which I hope you will see today in the presentation. That's 80 million zloty. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are developing, we are by all means, and I hope that we're going to codepend one on another, because the sectors that we have today on the stage also influence ours. We want not only to appreciate you, but also present you as the magnificent examples of the companies that develop perfectly, even though the time of the pandemic was difficult for all of us. Thank you very much. Later, I will let myself ask you for good advice to young designers who are considering practical uses of design for business, because your group of companies is absolutely a perfect example of how to commercialize this design. Łukasz, may I now ask Jacek Adamczewski, because it goes like that. In 2020, Lena Lighting worked out a greater revenue than a year before and also increased the profits. I can say that the pandemic helped you. How and why? Hello. Yes, the results we presented for 2020 were more than satisfactory, and there were several factors that influenced that. One of them was something that the pandemic provoked, if not forced. That was the introduction of the viral side and bacteria side lamps that help us here. They purify the air and they make sure that we're in good climate. Introduction of these units certainly helped us to drive sales, drive the market, and in a way provoke that as a company we didn't have to slow down the pace in developing the strategy that accompanies us. And that strategy is cooperation with architects, with designers, focusing on design, focusing on the development of designer collections of fixtures that we want to propose. In the case of this lamp, a very interesting example is that we started very slowly from introducing UVC technology. We know it perfectly well because we are the Polish producer with own laboratory, tech center, research center. And before, we never focus on UVC, we focus on energy saving, on LED technology, on controlling lighting. But with this background and technical facilities, we just realized that we can work on UVC technology, and we introduce it into a standard technical industrial lamp that we had for direct irradiation. That was the simplest move on our behalf because we could very easily and quickly develop such a product, and it enjoyed quite a popularity from the first day. But some new circumstances and some new opportunities arose. We decided to exploit them. People wanted flow lamps. UVC as a technology is highly specific because the direct irradiation cannot operate on people when people are in the room. They are noxious, they can burn you, they can make you lose your sight. Everyone asked about flow lamps, ones like the ones we have here, that can work when we're in the room and that are no obstacle for people. We decided we won't use the lamps we have as a solution, but that we would develop something new. That market had existed there before in purely medical sector. Hospitals, laboratories had such lamps, and yet they were technical lamps. Well, hardly any design in those. And we thought, okay, the time has come and we have the motif. and we invited an external designer to tell us, to suggest how to package UVC technology into something that would be minimum design, something looking cool, that would not harm the interior, something that would absolutely look great. And from a number of designs, we selected the one you can see here. It doesn't, it's not an eyesore, and it is functional. Certainly, this product, this technology helped us. Closing this subject, because the main question was about the revenue being so good, UVC and the sales of those lamps has helped us maintain good profitability of a company, and the growth trends, well, it just provided it financial protection against the need to look for savings and for cost cutting. So we could continue the strategy that we opted for some time ago, develop cooperation with architects, with designers, something we want to develop further and further. We see that this is the good course, and we want to introduce design in whatever we do. And you have maintained everything. Well, we have maintained and even increased. This is an investment in technological background. The success of that lamp has exceeded our expectations, and also in countries other than Europe. In April 2020, from April 2020 to December 2020, we sold about 15,000 of those lamps, which we believe to be more than a major success. So this technological facilities were developed. We had to employ more people in the production sector. We developed new jobs. Now, talking about the development of our market strategy, we could develop into this development with architects. We also employed more salespeople. We now have regional design developers, people who only focus on building relationships with architects, with designers, who are also looking in this market for the interconnection of design and business. So these are the design officers. Perfect news, perfect news. Let me only reiterate that this is the 14th Innovation and Creativity in Economy Conference. A year ago it was also online, but 2 years ago, here in the Polish Stock Exchange, we had crowds of entrepreneurs and designers, and your companies show how business cannot survive without designers, without creators, and it shows how this cooperation is profitable to both sides. We have here entrepreneurs because this is a business panel, but we need to bow down low before the designers. This lamp would have never worked without the designers. May I paraphrase Goethe's Mehr Licht?
Przemysław Pączek, a question to you. I'm fascinated with what you've been doing. Mag rail technology, this ultra-fast magnetic rail. What is it like here in Poland, because you came up with your own take on that, and how the business was impacted by the pandemic? Thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation. So, mag rail, what is it about? Basically, you have this new powering system. There is a new motor that is more efficient when it comes to rail. At the same time, what you do is you eliminate a major issue in conventional rail. So this interface that experiences a lot of wear and tear is not entirely stable in regular operations, rail operations. So we introduce these two elements and we put them on the conventional rail infrastructure, so you don't need to use and build new corridors, and it's quite lengthy and expensive. In the EU, the average cost is 30 million euro per kilometer, and it takes 15 to 20 years since the moment you start designing till the moment when it becomes operational. So we're talking about introducing an extra layer. This extra layer that will not interfere with the operations of conventional trains, so old trains can still operate, can still drive there. So at the same time, you can use magnetic trains that can be faster, they consume less energy, and they can run every few minutes, as often as that. And here we are talking about 6 to 8 million millions per kilometer, which is just a fraction of what you would have to spend on the development of a completely new line from scratch. And let me slowly move on to discussing the pandemic. What we saw is a reset of thinking in the transportation sector. That is this one European market where we have been quite active. There, when data had been properly analyzed, it turned out that all of the passenger operators have 8% of the market jointly. So, if you move them to every 10th car, results in rail becoming basically useless. And the management saw that risk, internalized that risk, because, these days the passengers see things differently. This old-fashioned rail system, where you have a large carriage with plenty of people, in this new post-pandemic world is not something that we are happy to use. As a result, the situation has become quite interesting indeed. Because, the regulators, the politicians have certain requirements. They have their expectations vis-à-vis the rail sector. They are tremendous. By 2035, there's this expectation that in the EU, there will be a threefold increase in rail transportation volume. So we have talked to a number of players in the rail market, and we saw that basically it is unfeasible. There is not sufficient capacity to deliver it. And the current system is truly analogous. It is, as old as the hills, and you cannot improve it any further. And, there is this expectation that you're going to boost this efficiency significantly in just 15 years. So basically, the only real option that you have is to introduce this interface. This is the only way forward for rail. This extra layer is very much digital. We can control the position of a vehicle that is driving 100 kilometers per hour, and you have amazing precision, that of millimeters. These days, you have huge gaps between trains. So, this pandemic period was, on the one hand, difficult because it disorganized our design works. It disorganized the supply chains to some extent. Last year, you had to wait because the chains were broken. Now you had to wait a bit further because basically there's a pile-up of orders, especially when it comes to semiconductors. It's, the waiting time is incredibly long, especially for some components. So there has been this reset in thinking about the rail system, and thanks to that, we have been successful in closing a few deals. On Monday, we announced one. It was signed on Friday. We're talking about our cooperation with the Italian rail and the other first ones that want to test this system globally. So it is an Italian equivalent of our system. Right, so this is the Italian equivalent of the Polish PKP. They manage the Italian rail infrastructure. Also, this week we are starting our cooperation with another such major infrastructure operators. I'm not going to give them any names here. So the interest is growing. Czech Group is another player that we have started working with. There'll be some tests that we're going to run with them still this year. We will have some more tests, all provided that the semiconductors arrive on time, because this is something that could delay our efforts. Another test, the longest passive levitation track. There's another company. They produce elements of rail infrastructure, and there are a few other players. Congratulations, Mr. President. Yes, there are things that you should be proud of and things to talk about. But we have one more guest that we would like to listen to, and we would like to also ask a few questions and maybe ask you to give a few tips to our listeners. Tell. He's a mobile technology expert and a co-founder and the president of Health Up. IOCare is your flagship brand and product, which is a system for remote lung disease diagnostics. Quite a hit. Yes, basically we have been working on the respiratory condition systems for some time, and we have been focusing on asthma among others. And there's one more which is quite painful for those who live in the environment which is full of dust, those who smoke. But what we saw is another area, COVID-affected people, post-COVID people that are recovering from COVID. And we had been running some clinical trials. We are talking about spirometry, which is a basic test that is necessary to see how lungs are functioning. Pulse oximeter is another device that we have. Now, in the age of pandemic, pulse oximeter is very important, especially when it comes to lower saturation and lower oxygen level in your blood. So this pulse oximeter plus other diagnostics gives us a better picture of what is happening to a patient, what is happening to their respiratory system, how they've been affected by a condition, which was a very interesting thing for us. There are ongoing clinical trials that we've been participating in. We've got a number of new publications when it comes to respiratory system studies, and we also have a system that is related to coughing. Coughing, you mean? Yes. So when a patient is undergoing such a respiratory test, it's not a simple thing. You need to take in as much air in and then breathe it out as fast as possible. Mind you, 6 seconds is not such a short time. It takes a lot of effort. So at the end, what you see are some fluctuations, as we call them, either coughing, or there is some hesitation there, or such a strange turbulence in the air. Coughing tells us that there is something wrong. It is not a desired thing. It should not be present during such a test. So, mind you, we have a publication that describes that the system is quite efficient, and it helps us to look at those curves remotely. Mind you, we all have different curves. We have our own breathing patterns. Each of us has a different one, and you can see a change in time thanks to that, which was quite interesting to us. May I mention the awards that you've received? Mind you, this is equipment which is quite useful, but there's more to it. You have received 2 design awards, this IF Design Award, and 2 Design Award, 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 The second one is an Oscar among Designers Awards, Red Dot Awards 2021. So, yes, we are really happy to have been given those awards. So, Spirometry.
Produkt dla pacjenta, ale też do gabinetu lekarskiego.
So, basically, it is largely about changing how medical equipment is perceived. So they used to be about, pipes, but we have built this mobile spirometers. It is good when it comes to ergonomics. So we got a double red dot in two separate categories. The first one was innovation, the second one a medical device. And the EF awards in the category of medical devices. The design is internal. Why? I had been working for a long time for creative agencies, and I had been designing a number of things there. So we have internal competencies to design interesting, good things. So when it comes to technology components, there were some disputes there because you need to work with materials. However, the design concept itself, that was internal. Congratulations on your in-house designers. A great award, quite a distinction for you. So we saw another mix of business and design. Well, it comes to the fore here, if you will. Your companies serve as a very good set of examples of how you can use the pandemic to your own advantage. Could you give us some insights, tips to all those entrepreneurs that continue to struggle with the impact of the pandemic so that you can encourage them to implement their ideas and hopefully be as successful as you are? Eva, would you please come first? How can we encourage them? An interesting thing, when it comes to ceramics, unlike the industries that are represented here, is something that relies largely on impressions, your eyes, what you experience, the context, the cultural context too, where we live, what we need, what we require, what we want. So, business support for architects, because I believe that's what you meant. To help others, first you need to know what you want yourself. You need to have your own vision, yes, and this is something that needs to be very stable. That needs to be stable, but the world is unstable. I admire medicine. I'm a great fan of medicine and all innovations therein. By the way, this is something that is related to my education. The latest technologies are not going to give us full coverage against unexpected things, and this is what happens, right? So the companies that are caught off guard, they face what they've been facing. Yes, you can come up with, some sudden solutions that are going to be helpful. However, what is important is to be a partner that is credible and supportive. So trust comes in here. I'll tell you a few words how we have been working in our market and where the trust came from. So we work with groups of designers and architects, and they have a direct impact on our surroundings, in this environment. They left their trace on this room too. They created this space, including details. So Tubonjin's products could be described as, just the surface. You have the floors, you have the walls, and the exteriors of buildings. At another time, I will tell you whether we are a collectivistic society, quite the opposite, because there are ways to tell what kind of society you're dealing with. Anyways, we have been working with architects for years. What was this work all about? We showed to them our new products, and mind you, the requirements have been growing. They needed to be more diverse, new collections, bigger formats, 2 by 40 or even more, and now people expect us to come up with bigger ones. So design, structure, what they are used for. It's not only interior, exterior, but the buildings where they are used. And then comes the pandemic. Everybody stops to take a deep breath and, what do you do? What did we do? The society, this community of architects is international. Yes, we have our indoor architects, but there is this international architect community, and, many of them are friends. Jointly with Dorota Kozhara, we came up with Tubonjin Design Awards dedicated to architects and designers across the world. It's aimed at professionals. Another thing, mind you, we are talking about IPR here, so we came up with this project which is called Tubonjin Design, internationally recognized. So we come up with those projects. And by the way, architects, designers need to know about the product, and design needs to be diverse, and you need to be able to use different textures, in-depth coloring needs to be applied, digital printers, and you have so many options there, quite a lot. There is this big wall at Więckiego Street in Łódź. Wojciech Siódmak's The Birth of the Day. Well over 300 square meters. And this painting was translated onto the wall, a ceramic mural. Quite impressive. But coming back to the subject at hand. What you need is to analyze the needs of the market and, to be exact, a given person in any given region. Because, you need to know your audience. So, Tubonjin Arena Design, a project that was launched at the very beginning of the pandemic. Some people would question the concept, everybody stopped, so should do the architects. There was this expectation that people would stop spending money, that there would be no investment. However, people stayed at home, didn't they? And we started looking at those interiors, our walls, our furniture, the little things that surround us, but also the exterior and the people that we are with at home, because that was the biggest challenge. By the way, the biggest impact of the pandemic will not be an economic impact. Rather than that it will be the impact on our mentality, and that impact will stay with us. Because we will have become less trusting. Distance is an important thing. We have been generating this isolation, and we wanted to get out of this isolation. So, the month was April. We looked at what was happening. We saw people staying indoors. And people would make jokes on social media. Whenever the pandemic is over, we will go for a long holiday, all of our family, each of us separately. That was the joke.
And then our partner company, partner on Tubonjin Design, we decided we would launch a new area. And that new area is Tubonjin Future Now. That was a competition that, I must tell you, it was surprising for us that it increased the realm of architects who joined our company. 2 editions, 36 countries, more than 1,000 designs in each edition. And then in 3 months, we had several dozen of other countries. So 83 countries that designed those areas together with Tubonjin, the areas between private and professional life. We've had spectacular projects that were functional. We must not forget functionality. They let us create this private and professional space. Have they been very different? Well, there were quite a few of those, but they were mostly focused on people. Now, bringing together those elements give us our business knowledge, how to work to keep that trust, to be able to help. Now, architects are really a community who are very useful for people. Now, how to work with people who are in a state of upset? Should we be limiting this business or perhaps developing it? And now we realize that large architectural offices are developing, building their client groups, because everyone who has professional knowledge, technical knowledge, every architect and designer should have this professional know-how. Do they have it in how they are coping in a crisis situation? How to help someone in a crisis situation? That's how we're helping. Design is our business and everything that is around business. Is it possible to see those designs? Yes, of course. There is Tubancin Design Awards website, and you can see those here. There's a catalog of inspirations which will make it to those 83 countries. There's also this option to join our community. The market forced it to create this Tubancin design community. So we have 83 countries working with us on business, but also on the scenario of what is going there. So we can invite the designers. We're also looking here at the room because we've got Dorota Koziara with us. In a few moments, we'll have an opportunity and pleasure to talk to Dorota. That's why we are bowing down our heads towards the audience. Thank you very much for this contribution, gentlemen. Would any of you want to consult, to advise? Well, from our side, I believe that following an idea around your own product and adjusting it to the market specifics is something that's really very important at a time of a crisis. We noticed that in the pandemic, you couldn't really do spirometry. Well, inpatient clinics closed. Spirometry is very direct. It's breath-based, so these were closed, and patients no longer could do that. Very important for people with asthma, for decisions about continuing on different medications of the modes of treatment. We went for a brainstorm, considered what to do, how to provide those spirometers to clients' homes so that they wouldn't have to buy those. There are no cheap solutions, only a patient who is very much aware will buy one, something that will be dedicated to a patient who is a chronic one. Normally such a test is just a one-off thing. Why would I need a spirometer if all I want to do is to check my lungs or what's happened? That's why we had that proposal, let's have telespirometry. So a patient may rent this device, may monitor themselves online with our expert on the other side. Yes, they can lease it in a special hermetic packaging. The patient does this test at home. An expert makes an assessment. After the test, this device goes to sterilization. The results are immediately there. So this is a cycle that can be used in many places, possibly also in many illnesses, not only in the case of problems with your respiratory tract. Well, at that time, that was a true hit. I understand that we can enter IOCA website and see the details of that service. Jacku? Now, two questions that I'd like to touch upon. Advising companies what can be done. I believe that it's taking a look at your company internally and see technological and intellectual potential and how these can be used and adjusted to the situation we have now. Our example shows that this can be done. We created lamps that we had never considered before, but the technological know-how gave us that opportunity. We also knew how to optimize all those production processes that we became strongly independent of the external providers of the external world. And that also proved a great success because we know how difficult it used to be. It is in the supply chain. We know about the delay. We know about the impact of individual events. This has helped us to win certain things in the market. Do you export your goods to 70 or more countries? Yes, of course we do. And that has helped us keep those results, also keep good results, good relationships with clients. Yeah, that's this internal look, analysis of our potential. Well, I will now advise our product, but I encourage that you don't lose your vigilance, this pandemic vigilance or parapandemic vigilance, because the virus is among us. New mutations are developing. We mustn't forget that either. Lockdowns go away. People miss this normality and sometimes forget that both the jabs are only for a certain time and that we must keep the distance, and we may or should also protect the places where we work, disinfecting the air so that we won't be returning to the situation where everyone suddenly has to go back home and work from home office, because on the one hand it's cool, it's optimum for the companies, but how about our psyche? Well, we miss contact with people, we miss breaking out from this home environment, and we miss the life in and around the company. So two things, and one more thing that we're not forgetting at all, that we're emphasizing, and we can see that this is a value that you need to work, that's focusing on design, going for design. Even the more technical products, if they are coolly designed, and if this design has been well thought through, these can successfully enter the market and win the client's recognition. May I say something more about design? May I ask Przemysław, other than a Coca-Cola bottle, Exxon, and many other trademark Greyhounds, buses, he also designed Skylab. My question is, who's going to design this beautiful bullet train? We don't know that yet. As a company, we primarily focus on the drive elements of levitation, the control system, where this design is still aside because these are highly technical elements that are only packaged later into a whole product. But they determine, yes, they are this starting point for designing the whole vehicle. Of course, we're not going to work on it because there are many companies that will design those, and we can't create this added value here. We intend to do it with the producer of the rolling stock, and then with two companies. One would be an engineering company, and the other would be a typical designer company capable of being responsible for the visual aspect. But this stage has been, in a way, begun. First talks have started. It's still too early to discuss the details. To get to here, we needed to generate powerful interest of the managers of railway infrastructure, because no one would want to approach the subject without it. We've gone through it already. Now we're going to focus on the vehicle. Taking a look at the crisis caused by the pandemic, I believe that every crisis first needs to be treated as an opportunity. Plenty of companies that are leaders of their sectors today developed in the times of crises. An example, perhaps, ours internal, very short. From the very start, 2019, we consciously decided we would use a mix of funds from private investors, equity crowdfunding, and grants that proved a success. We have gradually more and more professional investors, funds, venture capital, family office. The founder of Gemini Pharmacies, Piotr Hiter, invested more than 3,000 zloty into us. And last year, in March, we started the second round of equity crowdfunding financing. After 2 or 3 weeks, we had the pandemic and the oil crisis, financial crisis, and things really broke. Investors ceased to be active after a very good start of that campaign. All things went to a standstill. And in that grinding halt, we made that difficult decision to take the money we already had, that were already paid in, and focus on the technological and business aspect of what we are doing now. Interestingly, we are now at the end of the third round of such individual investor financing, and we have a number of examples. One of them is absolutely extreme. Last year, the investor was to invest several tens of thousands of euro. They resigned, they didn't want to, and now they've paid nearly 40,000 euros. So I believe it's a growth by the factor of 8. So no reason to get discouraged. You'd better focus when external factors don't let us control the situation. You better focus on the internal processes that you can influence more strongly. And just wait a bit, just a bit. And this brings results. Thank you very much. Fantastic discussion. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your time. Łukasz, I believe we're in for a moment's break. It's punctually, well, no, we are slightly, well, time is linear, it's not digital. We're a bit late, but 10 minutes break, and we're back into the play in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.